Only 7 o'clock. I thought it's not loud enough where I can hear. They yell at me.
We're all staring at you.
Expenses. Like Hampshire cool tree. Very good.
Right.
Right to the top of the hour. All right. This meeting order, if you just leave, sorry about that. We have a forum, please stand for the pledge. The pledge of allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of to the republic for which it stands,
one nation.
nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Entertain a motion to allow for electronic attendance, folks.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Kelly, Ms. Klein,
Aye.
Mr. Reed,
Aye. Good enough.
motion passed.
Anyone sign up to speak tonight?
No, sir.
Oh, I didn't.
So I'm sorry. Yes, I did. I'm mistake.
Come on now.
Michelle. First up.
I just wanted to talk about, understanding that the liquor commission is saying that the local officials can have the ability to enforce, closing us down, taking our license away, so we can bag. So this will be putting on the discussion. So you guys think, I'm not sure.
Some talk later on, I think that we are March, the COVID-19, talk on public relations.
Okay.
And Gina Pearson.
I'm sorry, I don't know if you guys have a bad network connection, but it's choppy on the picture and the sound.
I'll try to sit
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was my network.
No, I noticed that last time I was remote and the fan was on, but then somebody turned the fan off in the middle of the meeting and it really helped. So let's see if that helps.
Gina, if you could come over here and speak closer to the microphone, please, at the podium.
Hey, y'all, can you see me?
Yeah, sound is much better.
Yes.
I'm here, same reason for Michelle being here. We know that the village, the last few weeks has been very open to let us do business as, not as usual, but with some consideration. And with the new regulations going into effect at midnight tonight, there's a lot of us that are going to have to shut down our doors for good, if it happens. And I'd just like to say, beg and plead, that you do take into consideration, most of us have not been doing social media networks, advertising, getting some local people in. If people don't want to come in, they're not coming in. We've been very lucky during the pandemic when it started, with outside seating, arrangements being made. But obviously, we're going into the end of November, and today being a fluke day, I don't know how long that's going to last or be available. So I just, I think we're all here to kind of ask if, there's any way possible we could all work together to continue keeping our businesses open for the town.
Thank you.
And Jim Esposito.
Same thing they said, so most of the people written down.
That's all.
That's it?
Yes, sir.
All right. You should have the meeting minutes from November 5th, 2020. Please review those for any changes. Additions or corrections. Another number, the whole thing. You? Any changes? I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
So moved.
I'll
Second.
second. Oh, go ahead.
Questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Mr. Kelly,
Aye.
Ms. Klein,
Aye.
Mr. Cole? Here.
Okay.
He's muted.
Says he's on.
Toby.
Toby,
Toby.
unmute.
Unmute yourself.
Didn't get to the time, the person's last name.
It's still choppy. I'm answering aye.
There you are. Now you're on.
Yeah, okay. Mr. Gajeki,
Aye.
Mr. Reed,
Aye.
Mr. Robinson,
Aye.
motion passed 6-0.
Okay, Mr. Hedges, you're up.
Mr. Mayor, we have an ordinance adding certain parking restrictions on Warner Street at the Queen Village. You will recall it at the last board meeting. I believe trustee Coth brought this up. And so we did look into it. Chief Thompson and myself, and I believe you, Mayor, went over and talked to the manager at Casey. So everybody was in agreement that this was a good idea. So you have an ordinance before you that will create no parking.
All right, any questions or comments? So this would be no parking on both sides of Warner from 72 up to Old Mill. Questions for the board? All right, then I will entertain a motion to approve ordinance 20-28, an ordinance amending the village code, chapter 2, police regulations, article 6, parking regulations by adding certain parking restrictions on Warner Street in the village.
I'll make
So
your
moved.
motion.
I'll second it.
Who did the first? Toby,
Toby.
and second, Eric?
Any questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Mr. Reed,
Yes.
Mr. Gajeki,
Aye.
Mr. Cole,
Yes.
Ms. Klein? Aye. Mr. Kelly,
Aye.
Mr. Robinson,
Yes.
motion passed 6-0.
Mr. Mayor, we have a motion to, press the motion to approve a professional services agreement with EEI for risk and resilience assessment and emergency response planning for the village water systems. You do have both a flyer in your packet as well as a brief agenda supplement, as well as a memorandum and a contract from Tim Paulson. And Tim is with us tonight if you have any questions. I'll just give you a little background and say that this is a federally mandated requirement of our water system that must be completed by June 1st next year. And it takes roughly 6 to 7 months for this process to be completed. We budgeted $50,000 for this, which is the estimate that EEI gave us back about a year ago. Since then, we've looked at costs that other communities have been paying for similar studies, and we've negotiated with EEI. Right now, the contract is a little below $24,000. This is a state requirement. It's a federal requirement being mandated, but being implemented by the IEPA. It will give us a sort of a disaster planning plan, a disaster plan for our water treatment facilities. It is, as I said before, it's an unfunded mechanism, and we talked about it, but I believe both EEI has the familiarity with our system as well as they're doing probably at this point dozens of these studies for other communities at one of the engineering firms that are doing the most in the area, so I think they are the most qualified for this. And as we discussed the last time we had a similar project, we're not allowed as a village to bid this based on cost. It's bid purely on qualifications. So I do believe that EEI is the most qualified, but I also believe that this cost will be the lowest cost that we can find in the marketplace. So with that, we recommend this. Request a motion.
Any questions or comments?
Mr. Hedges, you said that you investigated other municipalities and what they paid. Where does the current quote land in comparison to those others?
This is the lowest quote. I was at the lowest buying. The next lowest was $27,000 in Maple Park. And then I talked to several communities in the closer in collar communities, and they're paying anywhere from $30,000 to $60,000.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions or comments? Then I will entertain a motion to approve, contract with EI for the professional engineering services agreement for the risk and resilience assessment and emergency response planning for $24,000.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Well, please.
Mr. Robinson,
Aye.
Mr. Kelly,
Aye.
Ms. Klein,
Aye.
Mr. Cole,
Aye.
Mr. Krajewski,
Aye.
Mr. Reed.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you. Next item is we have a resolution. Oops, that was my screen. We have a resolution setting the 2020 tax levy request. You have an agenda supplement in your packet, and then Ms. Lyons is available for questions, and they want to make some comments. Lori?
Yes, so our request for the levy this year will be 8.65% greater than our prior levy. This seems like a large amount. However, please keep in mind that our EAV is set, and part of the factor in this levy request includes new construction, which this year will be over $10 million. So we can discuss the dollar amount and hone in on that. However, my recommendation is for the dollar amount stated.
Any questions for the board? Ms. Lyons, there will be a public hearing on December 3rd for this.
I'm sorry. What did you say?
What did you say?
Repeat it. Repeat what you said.
Oh, I said there'll be a public hearing on December 3rd.
Actually, I need to notify you that there will be a change to that. We're required to have the resolution setting the levy 20 days in advance of the public hearing. So my agenda calendar is incorrect. We will have to have the public hearing and the ordinance for the levy in the second meeting of December. So that, I believe,
17th.
is December 17th. Yes.
17th. I'll change that in the resolution.
Yeah.
All right. Any questions or comments from the board? All right, then I'll entertain a motion to approve resolution 20-16. A resolution determining the amount of funds to be levied for the 2020 tax year through real estate taxes for the village of Hampshire, Boone County, Illinois. Changing the date on the 4th and 5th whereas to December 17th, 2020.
Also move.
Second.
Second. Oh,
Questions and comments?
Yeah. Ms. Klein? Aye. Mr. Kelly? Mr. Kelly?
Aye. I had to unmute. Sorry.
Sorry. Mr. Robinson?
Aye.
Mr. Reed?
Aye.
Mr. Krajewski?
aye.
Mr. Cole?
Aye.
Motion passed 6-0.
Mayor, we have a resolution closing SSA number 9 checking account at Resource Bank. And I'll defer to Lori again.
So SSA number 9 was established to do the drinking water facilities up near the truck stop and in the Hampshire Woods subdivision, industrial subdivision, if you will. So those bonds will be paid in full, and the last year of tax collection was this year. So therefore, we no longer require the checking account.
Any questions?
I have one question, and it's probably going to seem pretty silly, but was there any money left in there, or does that get transferred into another fund, or is it empty?
So all the funds that are collected on an annual basis are transferred to Amalgamated Bank, where the bond payments are made. So yes, we have a cashier's check ready to pick up at Resource Bank as soon as this resolution is passed, and then those funds will the cashier's check is made payable to Amalgamated Bank, and we will deliver the resolution, pick up the funds, and get them to Amalgamated right away.
But there's no surplus after that, right? All those funds will be used to pay the bonds, the last bond payments. Yes or no?
So it's a little bit more complicated than that. Yes.
Okay.
We didn't collect the entire amount of the bond payment this year because there are monies in a reserve fund that are already present at Amalgamated Bank. So the funds that are collected will pay off the Amalgamated Bank bond debt. It will pay off the administrative fees incurred for the third-party administrator that has administered this SSA, determining the levy requirement, et cetera. And then once all the final bills are paid, the village will likely be able to recover also a small administrative fee, and then we'll be done.
Okay.
Is it enough to buy an end loader?
Sorry, no magic in there.
Any other questions? All right, then I'll entertain a motion to approve resolution 20-17. A resolution authorizing the closure of special service area number 9, depository account at Resource Bank.
So moved.
Second.
Question or comment? Roll call, please.
Ms. Klein?
Aye.
Mr. Crowe?
Aye.
Mr. Grzecki?
Aye.
Mr. Reeve?
Aye.
Mr. Robinson?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Motion passes 0.
Mayor, the last thing we have on the village manager report is a water loss report, and you'll see 3 charts in front of you, and assistant to the village manager, Josh Ray, will make a few brief remarks. Josh?
Yeah, so these are the same, are close to the same 3 charts that you all saw 2 months ago, just updated to include the most recent billing cycle. As you can see, it's increased again. I'm not aware of any specific incident, any specific type of major leak that caused that to continue to increase so much. But it did go up, so the leaking is still occurring. Other than that, it's all the same information as when you saw it last. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to clarify.
Actually, Mayor, if I could just add one point. You recall at a recent meeting that we had a major leak that we detected at State Street, the orthodontist office. We believe it had been going on for several months. So I think the spike that you see basically midsummer, Mark and I have spoken about that. And we're pretty sure that that was the main cause of that. We lost thousands of gallons of water over a period of several months. They were unmetered because of before the meter at that location has been repaired, and I think that's why you see it come down significantly. I'll just also mention that we've talked in the past about trying to get our target was to get it down to 25%. At a recent meeting, you recall that EEI told us that really a good standard is really 10% loss. So we have a lot of old water lines. Twillers are really bad. We had another water break on 72 just this past week. We have plans to replace that. Correct property this time. We do have to get some easements. In fact, I'll talk to you about that just in a moment. So we are working on that. We're developing in the final stages of finalizing the capital budget, which I expect to present to you all in December. And that will include some expenses for infrastructure payments, infrastructure repairs over the next 3 years, focusing quite a bit on these water leaks. So this is a real priority for the village.
Anything to add, Josh?
No, sir.
Any questions to the board?
There is an active water leak at Elm and South.
So remember we fixed the water leak on South Street in the 100 block? Somebody's driveway was torn up. At the corner of Elm and South, the southeast corner has been standing water ever since that was fixed. So
It's first I heard about it, so we'll look into it.
still leaking.
Okay.
Southeast.
Do we have an online system or something on our website for residents to report incidents like this, that they can quickly report it or reach out without having to call into anybody?
There is a form on the website that they can fill out and send an email to staff, basically on any topic. You do get quite a few.
But they have to like download it, fill it out, then email it.
Once hit send, it's an automatic form. Actually,
Oh,
one of
all right.
Josh put together.
All right.
We also do have a water leak map that I distributed at a meeting back probably in June. And I can distribute that another time, but it shows, EEI keeps track of all leaks for us by size of the main and the age of the main.
Any other questions? Concerns? Anything further, Mr. Hedges?
That's all I have, sir.
Public safety.
The only thing I have to report is I commend the police department. We recently had a missing person, and I've watched, working for the Park District, the police department out in the farm fields, throwing everything they had at it. They've been unsuccessful so far, but I reported yesterday of a large object in a farm field about a quarter mile straight east of Tuscany, and one of the officers walked all the way over to the edge of the woods to find out it was a bag of garbage. But I just commend the police department for the care they put into this, and they did an unbelievable job.
Yes, they have.
I can give you a rundown if you'd like, a little bit of whatever. It's been almost a week since Mr. Reavers has been missing. We originally got the call. It had to be about 10:45 last Thursday night. We immediately deployed resources along with the King County Sheriff came over and brought some manpower with them. We also deployed 2 drones, and they were equipped with night vision. The following day, we got a hold of King County Emergency Services. They brought their command vehicle out. Along with that comes several volunteers. We did a search of the wooded area, the areas more likely he would be, taking the route home. We also were able to obtain a helicopter from Homeland Security, which was equipped with thermal imaging, infrared, all that kind of things. They did a grid pattern all over the areas that we thought that he would be, and he even expanded it out further. Saturday, we did a search with 6 patrol dogs from the King County Sheriff's Office. They brought in tracking dogs, went up and down Jake and side streets trying to pick up a scent. Sunday, we had 43 workers here from 2 search and rescue agencies. And they brought bloodhounds in, they brought cadaver dogs in, and how windy it was and then Monday I'm trying to think what we did on, or actually Sunday night we had the Sheriff's Department. I got a hold of Sheriff Hain. He sent me a couple of his investigators over, and we interviewed a few people just to kind of eliminate them and kind of add some clarity as to what we were doing. I'd like to thank him. And we had another search Tuesday, and we plan on having one tomorrow. Now, after we had a couple nice days, we're going to put the dogs back out there. The area's already been gridded out, so we know what we're going to hit. We've been maintaining the ponds, observing them twice a day in the event. So we're doing all that we can. We've reached out to the public through social media. They have all responded to us. We have some good footage that does help us with a timeline. Unfortunately, nothing goes beyond his walk back from Warner and Julie. But we're still hopeful on finding him. I'll keep you all posted. Obviously, when we know something, you will too.
Thank you, sir. Anything further, Mr. Cove?
No, sir. That's all I have.
Thank you, sir. Field and trails?
No report.
Field services?
Yep, sorry. The only thing I have is waste management will be delayed. Trash will be delayed one day next week due to the Thanksgiving holiday. Also, if you have trees that have protested the cold and have now decided to drop their leaves, next week is the last day for yard waste pickup. So thank you to, I'm guessing it was Mr. Reed who posted on the social media about that, but just as a reminder, next week is it. So if your tree doesn't drop its leaves by then, you are not allowed to burn in town. Reminder. You get to hold it till next week or next year. That's all I have to report.
Thank you, sir. Public Works?
I have no report for Public Works.
BDC?
We were fortunate enough last night to join the PR committee, and I won't take Mike's thunder away, but we received a presentation from A5 Branding, and then once we had completed that portion of the meeting, we began our meeting. It wasn't much longer after that because we had already committed about an hour and 45 minutes at that point. However, a couple of things that the BDC is working on. We are excited to report that Jay had checked in with Wendy Bell down at DCEO, and it appears that the grant application that we have for the streetscape project appears to be moving along, and we have, I think, one more stop. We need one more document. Is that correct, Jay?
Yes, the important thing though is the DCO has reviewed it, which is the 1231 requirement, so we no longer have to worry about the money going back to the federal government. It's not officially approved yet, but we have passed that benchmark.
Okay. And thank you, Jay. And I'd like to take a moment here to thank Freddie Beth Schmuddy, who was critical in helping us to get this done. Also would like to thank Lori, who was critical at the very beginning and obviously through the whole process, and then Jay and Josh coming along to help us. So that's a really big development for us. So we're excited about that. Business Development Commission has also going forward. We've laid out 3 new goals for us to work on. One of them is the development of, in conjunction with Jeannie Mayer over at the Chamber, a ambassador program where we try to coordinate with local CEOs and presidents of businesses to get feedback from them as to their impressions on the village and ways that we can improve on supporting them. Also, would like to, again, these are goals that will take a long time for us to work on, but developing an entrepreneurship training and development program to try to help people who want to start their business here locally. Our commission has a strong belief that local ownership is much better than corporate, sort of national corporate. Not to say that we don't, accept those in the town, but we'd like to help out local entrepreneurs as much as we can. And then in the spirit of Mike Armato, we'd like to, one of the other goals is to work on a commercial land development, more just from a sense of, thinking about it, and then hopefully we can come to the board with some recommendations on some potential actions that we would recommend. So those are the 3 future goals that we've got coming. So we're very excited about that. We just recently sent out the Hampshire's very own article. I'd like to thank Mike Reed and Dave Pizzolatto, and most importantly, Jeannie Mayer for writing it. But that just got sent out yesterday. And in December, we'll be focusing on the vintage hammer. And we've got 6 other companies after that we will be highlighting in that program. But other than that, there is nothing else to report.
Or if I could just add one thing regarding streetscape, I always want to bring this up for the record, please, Linda. I want to remind the board that it was your priority when I first came to town that you utilized $1 million in the CPB grant program. There were several priorities that were on the board's priority list above streetscape. Although it's a great project, the water connection project was our #1 priority. Highland Avenue was #2. Either one of those were deemed eligible. As we all know, we've now resolved the Highland Avenue project, which will be completed in the next few days. And we also have secured roughly about 60% of the funding for the north-south water connection. So we're moving on all 3 projects, but I did want to emphasize that streetscape, while it's something we're all looking forward to, was not the #1 priority.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Jay.
Sure.
All right, finance, a couple bills payable.
Sure. Okay, so we have some reimbursements today. You'll see before you there is $413.03 to be reimbursed and paid on or before November 19th, 2020. Any questions? Can you make a motion?
I will entertain a motion to approve bills payable in the amount of $413.03.
Oh, I make your motion.
Second.
Any questions or comments?
The bathrooms look fantastic.
I was just going to say, what kind of bathrooms did we do for $20?
Go in there and look, man.
I saw bathroom renovation. I'm like, for $20?
It's just been the paper towel holder.
I'm thinking like maybe they got colored toilet paper or something.
That's fantastic. 2 double ply.
No.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Mr. Coe,
Aye.
Mr. Kelly,
Aye.
Klein. Aye. Mr. Gajeki,
Aye.
Mr. Reed,
Aye.
Mr. Robinson.
Aye.
Motion passed 6-0.
And you have before you our regular accounts payable in the sum of $196,608.58 to be paid on or before November 25th, 2020. I was the other one. Any questions?
Yes, I have a question. Page 11. Page 11.
Yes?
You have a charge for gift cards for Maria and Vicky.
That is the operating name of the Red Ox.
Okay. Well, I can sell you gift cards too, you know. And find out.
Any other questions?
I have more of a procedural question on transition fees for the various governmental agencies we have agreements with. As we look to the new Crown subdivision, I know we were talking about that one will go back through agreements. How do we figure the percentage or the fee per lot that is given to each agency? Because the reason why I asked the question is I look at this and I see the fire department, who I'd say is pretty critical, got $2,100. The Parks District got $980. And the school district got $65,242. So how are we figuring out these equitable distribution of funds?
I can speak to that.
Okay, thanks.
It depends on the entity, whether or not it's done on a per bedroom basis or on an estimated population of, actually transition fees are set. So I take that back. It's a given dollar amount per the agreement in Prairie Ridge at this time. So that being said, traditionally, transition fees are a set fee across the board, whereas impact fees can be related to the number of bedrooms and therefore the number of occupants that will utilize the services.
And theoretically, a transition fee is to help them as we go from a non-taxable year to a taxable year, correct?
Correct. It's approximately equal to the 18 months of period of time where somebody's living in their house and the actual real estate taxes basically kind of catch up.
Okay. And that's done in the agreement with the builder, right? That's not a village ordinance of what those fees are. When we negotiate a development, we negotiate part of that transition fee amount, correct? So it could be different for one development and it could be different for another development. It's on whatever the agreement is for that individual development. Is that correct?
I believe that the transition fees probably could be negotiated, but generally it's the impact fees that are negotiated.
Right. Well, the
and
transition fees are set by resolution. So
Yeah.
they're fixed.
Right, but the resolution is tied to a single development, correct?
No, it's set. It sets the fee and then it's applied to the development. The village has not historically negotiated discounts of those fees. It prescribes what the amounts are, and that's what's due.
Okay, so we pass a resolution, and then for anybody that wants to develop within Hampshire, they must pay that transition fee that was passed by resolution.
Yes, I think that's a better description. Correct.
And there's a schedule of those fees, Trustee
Right,
Kelly.
but there's no individual negotiation for the different developments. It is a set fee equal across everybody within Hampshire.
Yes, unless a developer comes in with a development agreement and requests negotiations. And that can happen, and I frankly expect that to happen. But anything like that will come before the village board.
And then Mr. Schuster, does that require a new resolution? Because that's not a zoning variance, so how does a variance on a resolution work?
Well, it would be a resolution to approve that agreement with that different schedule of fees.
Okay.
The simple answer to your question, Trustee Kelly, is just the property tax, the portion of property taxes that schools share.
So because they get 85% of the tax bill, their percentage of transition fees is generally 85% larger than all the rest of them.
Well, and one of the reasons why I asked too, and I look at this amount is I look at that's what developers have had to pay on top of, or as a part of doing business within our village. We talk about it's easy to do business. I also look at surrounding communities where development has been gangbusters. And if I remember the chart we were given accurately, many of those either don't charge a transition fee or charge an impact fee, or some of them don't charge either. Is that accurate?
I think that would be an exception right now, Trustee Kelly. I do know that Pingree Grove did not have transition fees, or excuse me, impact fees.
Right.
Cambridge Development came along, so they had no fees really. Instead, they received several donations, including a village hall. But since then, I think we've all heard them regret that because now it's difficult to implement. But I do, and there are actually committees. The Mayor's Caucus has a committee on on impact fees. So this is a topic that we share among the municipalities. And I would say that our fees are pretty competitive right now and not out of the ordinary.
And as it comes relates to Pingree Grove, that's one of the reasons the school district 300 wanted to build in Hampshire versus building in Pingree Grove in this upcoming development, because they don't pay any of those fees.
Well, I mean, they were pretty close to signing in Pingree, but regardless of that, these aren't the impact fee. This isn't an impact to the village of Hampshire. It's a transition to get through the taxing part of it. So I think maybe a conversation for another time, but it just seems like $65,000 for a transition fee to the school district for the development we have going in, and then looking at a fire department that got $2,000 seems a little off to me, but that's just me. That was my only thing on the finances.
Any other questions?
Then I will entertain a motion to approve the second accounts payable, the amount of $196,608.58.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Mr. Reed?
Aye.
Mr. Gajeki?
Aye.
Mr. Coe?
Aye.
Ms. Klein?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Mr. Robinson?
Aye.
Motion passed 6-0.
Nothing further.
Nothing further. All right. Public relations has a couple of, just one item here.
How do you guys want to do it? Do you want to get the roundtable update stuff done first, or do you want to just dive right in?
The what? Okay.
So just,
Dive right in.
dive right in. All right. So COVID-19 is a pandemic. We're all facing it. There's been a lot of stuff that's come out of Springfield in the last few weeks as far as what, basically, as we talked at our last meeting, the governor blaming the local towns and officials for not enforcing his executive order. And as such, a lot of elected officials and groups like Hampshire West have reached out in the IML and that kind of stuff, tried to like pressure the governor into saying, okay, how would you like us to do this? Because at this point, there's not anything that we can do. This was a topic tonight in Metro West when we all met together. Mr. Hedges was also on the call. And it's a conversation that all municipalities in this area are facing, right? So the reason it's under public relations is because earlier this week, the Public Relations Committee drafted and approved a statement that we were going to make, put out there, because we recently have come under fire as to why the village isn't enforcing the governor's right from some residents. So most of, I'm not going to say most, but there are some people in Hampshire that are just like, okay, being a little stereotypical here, but this is America, you're taking away my freedoms, I don't need to wear a mask, businesses should be open, all that, on that whole side of the argument. And then there's the other side of the argument where the village needs to be doing something because businesses need to be closed, the government made the executive order, whatever. And so there's a lot of municipalities in the same boat trying to figure out how you enforce something that you legally have no jurisdiction to enforce. And then yesterday, I believe it was yesterday, maybe it was the day before, the IML released a statement from the Illinois Liquor Commission that says that the individual municipalities have the authority to, the local liquor commissioner, which in our case would be Jeff, and then the liquor commission would be able to ultimately suspend a license for 7 days just off the bat, so the liquor commission can meet. And then you guys would decide, the liquor commission would then have to decide if the business being open would present a imminent threat to the welfare of our community. I think that was the terminology. But within that same document, or some of the stuff that you read and research that I've done, it's pretty, it doesn't give you real latitude, right? It seems like they were reaching for something and they grabbed it. And this is what they got, because this is something that's always been in the code. This is not something that they just created. This is not something that that is a part of the executive order. As a matter of fact, as you go through the executive order states nothing in this act shall be construed to affect the jurisdiction, responsibilities, or of the police forces, firefighting forces. But then at that same end, they're asking you to enforce it. So the same executive order that they're citing as a reason for us to enforce something, later on in that same executive order, it says that basically he doesn't have the power to tell the local police forces what to do. So kind of where we are right now. The reason that we came up under public relations is we're trying to figure out as a committee, and it was suggested that we go to the village board, is what we should say, what our response should be. You look at all the other municipalities in town, some people are in the area, some municipalities like Geneva as an example, they're looking to hold a special meeting on Monday, I believe, was it Monday? Where they're looking to discuss the possibility of passing a public nuisance law where they can fine people for not wearing masks or that kind of thing. There are other towns that, like Woodstock, as an example, Woodstock passed, I think it was last night, it was published in the paper today, that they are, not going to actively enforce the, order, right? But if you are gonna stay open, you need to follow these rules, and it was basically the same thing it always has been with, social distancing, and tables have to be certain, feet apart, and can only have so much capacity and that kind of thing. So really, this is why it's all at the board level, for the deeper level discussion, as far as what our response should be, and then what we should be telling our residents. It's a no-win situation. There's no right answer.
Who is the town that's meeting Monday?
Geneva,
Is Geneva home rule?
yes.
I believe so.
So that's the other side of this, right? So we know that we're not home rule. So there's certain ordinances that a bigger town could pass and enforce, and then there's bigger or smaller towns like us that we would pass something that wouldn't be enforceable. But even if they are home rule, the other part of the conversation is how much money does a municipality want to spend on enforcing this? Because if you pass an ordinance in your town for whatever reason, and there's violations issued and you're taken to court for this, you need to litigate it.
Sure.
And you need to pay for it. So there's also the theory is that, okay, this is coming down from the governor of Illinois. It's a state level issue, and he's given no municipality any real teeth to do it. So the stance also could be that it's his order. We should figure out a way to enforce it, or get the legislature together that hasn't met since May 16th and pass it into meaningful legislation that we're able to enforce. But at the current time, we're not able to do so.
Well, and part of what got the ball rolling was we were, wanted to post something on our Facebook page for the village. Trustee Kelly had written an article or a letter, and then we were going to talk about that tonight. In the meantime, we got a letter written by the IML, which represents all 1,298 municipalities in the state. It was pretty much mirrored what Trustee Kelly had written. A little bit more.
It was more tactful. It had a J spin to it.
It got to the point, not as quickly as you did, but it got to the point. So, just so the residents are aware of what we're allowed to do. We certainly want to keep everybody as safe as we can. There's no doubt about that. Certainly wearing a mask is smart. Social distancing is obviously smart. Washing your hand, every press conference I've ever seen, wash your hands. Do what's the right thing. But as this has progressed, thank you, and move forward. The village has very few things we can do. We can walk into any of the establishments in town and see that they're not obeying the exact order, but then we can't cite them. We have to go through the health department or the state police. If this new regulation with the liquor commissioner, where I have a 7-day rule that I can, suspend a license for 7 days, not take the license away, but there's still a hearing that the offender would have to have. I would have to determine that there's an imminent risk, and I'm certainly not a doctor. I don't know what an imminent risk would entail. So there's so much unknown that it's, the village is in a tough spot as far as what we can and can't do. The business owners are even in a worse spot because they're the ones that get the brunt. If they have one person that walks up to the bar when they're doing their carryouts or doing, whatever they're trying to do to stay in business and keep their employees employed. I mean, we've been doing this now for what?
9 months.
9 months. And, it's certainly peaked back up, but you still can't get reliable data from any health department that I've seen on where outbreaks are actually occurring and in what numbers. I couldn't tell you how many cases actually are in the village of Hampshire.
The last information I have is 217 cases that were in the village of Hampshire, but that information is from the 28th of October.
Yeah.
So I can speak to the data.
These numbers. Trustee Kelly, do you have any?
Yeah, I have updates on data. So I just want to give a couple of points of view, and I do want to preface this. So We often hear we need to look at the data, we need to listen to the experts. We hear a lot of that stuff. That resonates with me because, you know, to set the foundation for everybody that may not know, I've had 2 years of graduate level data science and statistics work as well as undergraduate statistics work. So I get the data, I get the models, I understand it. And that's what helps me feel comfortable, right? I look to that so that I have an understanding. I've been working with the county that I had been pulling raw data from their data set so that we could pull in and see what is happening within Hampshire. As of October 25th, that data flow stopped. That data flow stopped because the state changed how they report their data. I spoke with Michael Isaacson, who is in the Kane County Department of Health. He has been a tremendous supporter of trying to get us information we need this week. Jay has been on those emails as well, and I think he can even attest that there are times that Mr. Isaacson has written back to us within an hour with a response. They, at a county level, are not able to go through the data and are having significant problems with the way the state is reporting it, and they can't get the state's data to work. It's the way he's put it is there's too many errors. They've changed how the formatting is. They have to figure out what they do with this new data stream and how they could even use it. That's why if you go to the Kane County website right now, it redirects you and tells you their dashboard is down and you need to go to the state website. It's because they can't consume the state data because there are issues with it, and the state has admitted to that to the county and said it is something they are working on. That being said, he also pointed me towards Northwestern University, who has a by zip code breakdown that looks at things of tests per day, cases per day, positivity rate, and the rolling 7-day average. There were a couple of interesting things that came to that we have to keep in mind. And I think that we should all keep in mind when we're watching the news and reading the reports and this came from Mr. Isaacson as well as on Northwestern's website. On November 6th, the state changed how they report positive cases. And they started it being on November 6th, it started being probable cases and confirmed cases. So it's not all positive tests, it's positive tests plus probable cases. And a probable cases, you have these symptoms and they're the indicators of potential COVID, but you haven't tested positive yet. Now they have said that somebody who is probable that gets a positive test is not being double counted. That only one of those counts, but they have included both. They went back weeks worth of data and loaded it all on the 6th. So Northwestern and the county do not count November 6th in any of their calculation metrics, because if you go to the state website, you'll see on November 6th, they show 18,000 positive cases happening because that's the date they loaded a bunch of historical data. The other thing you'll notice when you look at that is from November 6th forward, the lowest day is higher than the highest day from the beginning back in the spring of any time that's happened. So the probable cases have also had a significant increase in the total being reported by the state. According to Northwestern and the county, in our zip code, at the zip code level 60140, and I'll talk about that in a second, they cannot separate out probable and confirmed. So we don't have a count of just confirmed cases. The counts that we have access to is that total probable and confirmed, which has spiked when they're looking at the reporting. As of the 17th of November, we in 60140, again, it's zip code level. As we know, that's not just Hampshire, that's Hampshire and Pingree Grove and some of the surrounding area. They add the 7-day average is 100 tests per day. 100.7 because it's an average of calculated metrics. So on average in those communities and all of our communities, which is, can we estimate what, 16, 17,000 people, maybe between everybody within 60140, somewhere around there, 100.7 tests per day, 19, as of the 17th, 19.9, let's just call it 20 probable and confirmed cases combined, with a positivity rate of right around 19.7% for 60140. are when they look at, and Ryan has brought this up before, and I think it's a great thing that we need to recognize, is how do you level set that when you look at a Cook County or places that have millions of residents, right? And the way they do that is they look at it per 100,000 people. What does that mean per 100,000 people? So the number of new cases on a 7-day average per 100,000 people is 676, which is fairly high compared to what it's used to be. It's actually significantly high. The difference is this is, again, probable and confirmed. If we want to put it down into our smaller town number, if we look at that per 100 people, it's about half to 0.6 positive cases per 100 people, right? Or you can say 6 per 1,000 people. So there is some data we can get, Mr. Reed. It's a lot different now than it was back when the mitigation plans were put into place. It's a lot different than when the All in Illinois procedures were defined by the Department of Health, and they haven't been changed. And what I mean by defined is those break points, right, of positivity rates, the hospitalization rates, as well as total tests being given. So those are things to keep in mind. I will share afterwards the link to the Northwestern. You can look up any zip code and it will show you graphs over time. It goes back to the September 19th. So it's a 2-month average. You will see from the 6th, the spike up, and then the arc of continuing up. It started to come back down for our zip code, which is a good thing. But the numbers are pretty high from what they're showing in here. And I know that Trustee Krajewski also talks about the hospitalization rates. And I know that Jay is in contact with Trevor, and we're making sure that within our area, the hospitalization rates are still okay. They are still in the green for Kane County, or Region 8, as we're a part of. And they have gone down a little bit. So there has been less capacity in the hospitals. I don't know if that will continue, but it does make it difficult. The reason why I go through all this is it makes it difficult for a couple of things. One, we've had the way that we track the risk changed without the mitigation to that risk changed and defining those breakpoints. The state is having data issues right now. They've admitted that the data they have isn't clean. They don't know exactly how to report it down or how to break it down, and the county isn't being given the tools. They are doing the best with what they can for contact tracing and everything else. The other thing I want to point out is the number of tests, and this is my personal connection to this. 100 tests per day and about 16,000 people is not many. And I don't think it's that many for a couple of reasons. And I will speak from direct personal experience. I don't want to do hearsay. I have a 91-year-old grandmother who has somebody that lives with her, who was told, and this is in Hampshire, these are all in Hampshire, who was told by her doctor in Hampshire not to get a test, because even though somebody within her home tested positive, because really there's nothing they can do for you unless you have trouble breathing. I had another friend that was told that they were exposed to somebody who was positive, who had to fight with a doctor for 6 hours to get a test approved so she could go get a test. I've had 3 other direct relatives be refused by doctors to go get a test. I had a child, my cousin's child, who the pediatrician, they basically had to fight with the pediatrician because the pediatrician just said, let them wait it out. It's not going to be that serious, even if they do have it. And they're like, we have to work. We have to figure things out. And I have another friend whose spouse was quarantined because they had come in contact with somebody. And yet they were told by the same company to continue to come in physically into the office, knowing that their spouse had been quarantined. So it's really hard for me as an official to understand what is our responsible approach in this when we talk about businesses and we talk about asking people to do the right things. I think that's absolutely, asking them to do the right thing is paramount. But I also wonder, how do we make it easier? And Jay, I think you can talk to this a little bit. How do we make it easier for people in our community to get the information they need? Do we need to start putting stuff on our website? Do we need to make testing available in a better way? Do we need to start recognizing that it's not all roses when it comes down to whether people are positive or not and how these numbers represent? And what does that mean for us as a village? So I'm going to get off my soapbox, but I wanted to share the data and then my personal stories that are tied to the data where I start to get a little frustrated.
If I could just respond to two things you said, Trustee Kelly. First, you mentioned Trevor, Chief Herman. I do have an email just today from Trevor Herman that the ICUs at Sherman Hospital are at 53% right now, and the ventilators are at 25% capacity. That is higher than it has been, but it is not at an alarming rate, in his words. To your point about testing, I have investigated testing. We've been approached by a private company that would set up a test center. We've also spoken to District 300, and they've agreed to use the high school, allow us to use the high school for a test site. The private test would be a cost of about $150, a range of $120 to $150. They do not accept insurance, but some insurance policies will cover it if you submit it as a claim. I've also spoken to Kane County about a free test site. There's a long waiting list, but if we put an application in for a free test site at the high school, it's possible that it could be approved by the end of December at this point. So that with the private company, we could have it up and running in about 2 weeks, but it would be a cost of, as I said, $120 to $150 per person.
I just have one question for the board. If Springfield was that serious about this, why don't the legislators pass a law so the Hampshire Police Department can enforce it? If they were that true serious about it, why don't they pass a law so we don't have to dance?
Because in my personal opinion, he waited too long. And now he has gotten even the Democratic, his Democratic allies that are representatives and senators are starting to break with him. And now will not pass this unless there's like a quick, I would say quick pro quo, but like it's in the beginning, if he would have done it near March or toward the beginning of this, it would have been a slam dunk, it would have been done, and we could have moved on. But he waited too long. And so now he's not going to get the votes that he needs.
So how are we to enforce something that the state of Illinois elected officials down in Springfield can't pass to give us the tools we need? How can we enforce anything?
Want to show you you can't.
You can't.
It's the health department or state police that have to enforce.
And the health department is keeping up with contact tracing alone. And there was an article in the newspaper the other day about, and it was even brought up on Metro West, of the fact that there's some municipalities that are contacting the health department with a list every day or every time that there's an incident or whatever. And then they will call back to the health department and see if they followed up with the business or whatever. And they always say that they're behind. And then when it gets to the state's attorney's office, the state's attorney says that the health department hasn't even reached out to them once. And even if they did, they're not going to do anything about it.
Yeah, but so we talk a lot about what we can't do, but there are things that we should do for the community as well, right?
Yeah.
We need to educate people. I think.
Hold on, if I could just jump in for a second, I think this is part of why people get frustrated with politicians. I think at times, I just want to offer an alternative view to what's been said at this point. I think that there is no doubt that most people alive, all people alive, have not lived through a 100-year pandemic. And so a lot of the rules and things that are coming down are imperfect, oftentimes inefficient. We're not a country in a way that's run with a lot of top-down control. I think that should be an encouraging thing to all of us who live in the United States, because I think that was part of the original intention of liberty in this country. However, I don't think it takes too much of a data scientist to go out and figure out that the sun is shining. While the data on the sun might be developing or whatever, we can all walk out and take a look and see that the sun is shining. In the same way, I don't think it's very difficult to look across the country, specifically right now in the upper Midwest, whether it's Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, Indiana, Illinois, et cetera, and to see that even if our testing measures somehow, and I really do appreciate the detail that Aaron had dug into with this source with Michael Isaacson and the county. However, I think it would be irresponsible on some level to frame the argument around we're not sure. and that's just my opinion. I think if you take a look at the data that's not just coming out of the United States, but other countries that are very similar to us, there's a pretty consistent pattern. And this is exactly what they said in March. They said in March, what if we are not capable of getting this virus under control, that when the fall, especially when the winter comes, then we are going to be faced with a much bigger problem. And whether the data is perfect, and, you know, I share Aaron's love of data as well. It's one of, you know, I'm a nerd that way. But it is very difficult for me to interpret the data, not just coming out of Illinois or anywhere else, and say that it's within the margin of error to not understand what's happening. We are rapidly advancing in this. The hospitalizations that are coming. And to me, and I think this is what Trustee Kelly had said previously, I should have referred to you as that. Trustee Kelly had said that before, it really does come down to hospital capacity. And hospital capacity almost always trails by 2 weeks the cases. It's, you know, that's basically how it, 7 to 14 days, it usually trails. If you look at the cases that are going up. So I guess I just want to make sure that, yes, it's difficult. Yes, Pritzker is imperfect, as is every elected officials, ourselves included. However, I think we really need to, as we go into, as I've been framing it, I think this may be 3 to 4 of the darkest months in our country's history, on par with Pearl Harbor, on par with 9/11. When you look at the amount of death that we are going through in this country, it is radical. It is not a, you know, if in for those, I think, who perhaps might believe that, you know, they're calling every death a COVID death. There's another statistic, and I'm sure Trustee Kelly has seen this as well, is it's called excess death within the society. And so what they do is they look at, you know, a period of time in the past, and they say a population of this size in the United States from 2015 to 2019 should expect to see this much death. The excessive death is those deaths that are above what that normal number would be. And that number is in excess of the 250,000 published number that we had. So I would like us to frame this argument around the fact, I just don't want us to sort of fall into the trap of we're not sure, it's hard to understand. The virus is a threat in our community right now, and is sacred as the life of Walter Reamer is, that we have been trying to protect over the last 4 or 5 days, which I think is an example of how great our village is and the people that live here. I think we also need to take into very serious consideration those other lives that have the potential to be affected. Now, I'm not advocating at this particular moment what exactly we should do, because I believe that more conversation, but I do want to make sure that we do frame it around the fact that we are in the middle of the worst crisis in my lifetime, and for many, I think, who are older than me, in their lifetimes as well. So I just think that we need to really ask ourselves is, what is the responsibility that we have to protecting the health of the residents that live here? And I think that we need to keep all options on the table that are available to us in order to protect them, because life is sacred. You know, I'm fortunate to be young. My family's young. And so, you know, the odds are not as bad for us. However, that is not the case for all people. And so I just wanted to kind of put that out there, because I don't want us to get confused about process and about, you know, data is imperfect. It always is imperfect. We never have it right until after the fact, and we can have people study it in university and all that other stuff. But we are in the middle of a radical health crisis that is killing a lot of people.
Ryan, let me ask you this. How do we enforce something that is not enforceable? How do we enforce something that the state legislature can't even come up with a tool for us to enforce? How do you go in and shut a business down when you don't have the authority? Answer me that.
Okay. Do you want me to? I mean,
absolutely.
Question? Did you want me to answer? Okay. So
absolutely, because I'd like to. I don't want to get it either, and I don't want anybody to get it either. But I have a feeling that most of the restaurants and bars in town are doing everything that they legally need to do and above and beyond with sanitizing and the whole 9 yards. But if we can't go in and physically shut them down because we do not have an enforceable law from Springfield, how do we do it?
No, and to be fair with you, I think that at this point, what I was hoping, you know, when I came to this meeting, obviously this was the part that I was most interested in, what I prepared the most for, is I think we need to start asking ourselves the question. I think Trustee Kelly was starting to move in that direction is, what I don't want us to do is just lay back and say, we can't do anything, so we won't do anything. I think we really need to dive in now. Whether this again, my focus on this board is business, right? That's what what my personal specialty is. It's what my focus is. So the last thing anybody wants to do, and I don't care what you think of any politician, whether it's DeWine in Ohio or or Pritzker in Illinois, no one wants to shut down a business. That's political suicide. Everybody knows that. The question, I think, is if this this liquor, the liquor commission thing. I spoke to 2 different lawyers this week because I was asking this question: is what are the things that we can do? That was one of the things that was brought up to me before the email came along from the IML. I think this board, Toby, I guess to answer the question is we have to ask ourselves the question is, do we have the responsibility for the safety of the residents? If the answer to that question is yes, then we have to ask ourselves, what are the tools that we have and then the second thing is, do we believe that indoor dining in bars is contributing to the spread of this virus? Now, I respect Trustee Kelly as an incredibly intelligent person, and I trust his research process. I really do. The people that I have spoken to, including doctors and some other politicians, have indicated that there is no doubt that indoor dining and indoor bar attendance is a prime contributor. It may not be the only one. It appears that home gatherings are the largest contributor. At least that seems to be where the data is pointing at this point, individual home. But if it is our responsibility to take care of them, and if this is something that is affecting the health of our people, then I think we need to ask ourselves, what tools do we have on the table to contribute to the safety of our residents?
So
I don't know if that answers your question, but that's my answer.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. I'm assuming the bars and restaurants are when I go to Copper Barrel, you're masked up, there's sanitizer, the whole 9 yards. But my question to you or Schuster or anyone, if we do not have an enforceable law other than President Magnuson going into the bar and shutting it down for 7 days, what tools do we have to enforce?
Mr. Schuster can, I guess I'd be curious to, because that's really what I'm curious to hear from a legal perspective, outside of the liquor, pulling the liquor license, are there any other things that we need to do? And not saying, Toby, to go back to your point, is I think we need to answer those first 2 questions first. What is our responsibility? And do we think indoor dining and bars, even with mitigation efforts, are they putting our residents at risk? But that being said, if we answer yes to both of those questions, then I think the third question would be to Mr. Schuster. Is there anything beyond pulling the liquor license that we have at our disposal?
You have authority under the municipal code in a couple of areas. You can make regulations that may be expedient for the promotion of health or the suppression of diseases as a local ordinance, which would then give you authority to enforce. You have ability to pass health and quarantine regulations. You have the liquor license provision. Geneva is currently not listed on the Secretary of State list of home rule communities.
Thank you.
And they are considering a public nuisance ordinance. So it would be interesting to explore that further and see what background those any other municipalities have put into considering or passing such ordinances. I haven't done that yet, but there is some authority to make a local rule if you choose to do so. And of course, it may be subject to challenge, but it's an authority that's given to local government under the state municipal code. I think everybody's been hesitant to jump in, and the frustration is that the governor, by executive order, has created some regulations that are difficult of local enforcement, and yet he has called out local governments for not enforcing those. So it depends which way you, I guess, which way you want to go. There may be some avenues for local enactments for local enforcement.
So the notion that we don't have any power is not totally true.
Well, but it's a similar argument to why we didn't approve residents having chicken coops in their backyard. I know you're gonna look at me funny when I say that, because here's the thing, we can pass any rules that we want. But how many, okay, but seriously though, we can pass any ordinance that we want, okay? And as you look at cities like Geneva, right? What was their number? I think it was, they had 140 restaurants or 140 establishments that serve food. And when they take out all the chains and that kind of stuff, they were down to a diner or cafes or whatever. Their number was like 70. Okay. They also have a police department that's much larger than ours. So who's going to be our enforcement agency in this case?
Mike, we only have, we don't have 70 restaurants.
We have 5.
So
we have 5.
So that's point number 1 when comparing us to other municipalities, right? My second point is our enforcement arm of this, if we were to pass some kind of local rule, would be Chief Thompson and any one of the, 3 officers that are on duty at any given time? 2. Right. So to your point, I understand where you're coming from, but again, if you can relate it to the same thing as we didn't pass chicken coops because we didn't have an ability to enforce it at all, because we didn't have code enforcement. Now we're looking at doing something like this where we're going to target businesses and that kind of thing and try to enforce this with 2 officers on duty at any given time.
Yeah, but we also can pull the liquor license if need be.
Okay, yeah, I think it's a little different than it's a little different than code enforcement. I think that I appreciate the relation to it. It is a little different. To Trustee Krajewski, and sorry that I referred to you as Ryan earlier.
Oh, I did the same. So it's
fine. The state does report case exposures by business type, and in Region 8, which is what we are in, which is us in DuPage County, schools are number 1 at 11.3%. Business and retail is number 2 at 10.8%. Restaurant and bars is number 3 at 10.3%. Then hospital and clinics, other, and office setting. So businesses, retail, restaurant, and bar, and schools are your top 3 areas through contact tracing in our region, where it's being determined that people are potentially getting COVID. Now they do state in here, and this is important, that when you do your contact tracing and you go back 14 days, if you were in school and you went to a store and you went to a bar, they're marking all of them. It's not 10% of 100%. It's
right.
Every single location gets marked, but it is those are the top 3.
Right.
But if we were to decide to go down this path, and let's just say, okay, we pull liquor licenses. Okay. So that's the enforcement. So I'm gonna pick on Michelle because she's right here. Okay. We pull Michelle's liquor license, right? So we pull her liquor license. That means she can't serve booze. That doesn't mean that she can't still operate a restaurant.
Right.
That's right.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. And I want to be clear here. My goal in this portion of it was to keep us from the notion that we can't do anything.
Right.
And to maybe drive this second conversation of, A, is it our responsibility to keep our residents safe? B, if it is, do we think dining in indoor dining in bars is a problem? And then the last question would be that. But we do have tools at our disposal. Like I said, I love Michelle and Randy. I love Ann, Tony, and Sam, and Peter runs the Red Ox, and had met Jimmy one time. He seems like a great guy. No one wants to do this, but I think at the same time, no one wanted to send their kids to war in World War II. No one wanted to do. I mean, maybe some people wanted to do that, but it was a sacrifice that we made in order to protect our citizenry. And unfortunately, and my heart is heavy that is going to disproportionately fall on some people if we go that direction. But I don't think it would be we would not be fulfilling our duty if we just threw our hands up and said we can't do anything, because there are things we can do. The question is, should we do those things? And I think that's a conversation. And that's what over the weekend. So what I did, because this has been weighing on me heavy, because I thought we kind of got away a little easy in the beginning because, in a sense, from a political standpoint, was because we had, strong enforcement, we had strong compliance. And I give credit to all of our businesses and bars in town that did this, complied in the beginning, and they suffered, incredible pain. So I don't want that to get lost in the equation. But I think we need to ask ourselves, what is our responsibility to the people of this town? And then what can we do about that? And I think over the weekend, what I did is I worked with Dave Pizzolatto to create a survey. I think we really need to get the input from the citizens to find out what do they think. I mean, in the end of the day, we're representatives of them. We make decisions based on, more knowledge than they have, only because we spend more time thinking about these things. But I think their opinion on these kind of things is really important. And I'd like to see us send that survey out, just at the very least, to know where our people stand.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I think that giving the community a voice is a good thing. I think that, though, whatever that voice comes back at, we have to truly listen to. So two scenarios, right? One is they come back and say, lock it all down. If we fail to act, so I'm going to use the school district. Sorry, Trustee Reed, but I'm going to use the school district as
a perfect example.
You ask feedback and then you don't follow what you just asked, regardless if you agree or not with the outcome, it could be worse than not having asked in the first place. So if they come back and say lock down, we would really need to consider that that's what our community has asked for. If they come back and say no restriction whatsoever and don't enforce anything, we'd have to also consider that if that's what we're saying. But to the other side is that we're talking a lot about, like, what are the actions we take for enforcement? I think we also need to talk about what are the things we do to provide services for our community. Do we consider having Jay set up for a testing site for those that want to be tested within our community that have had trouble getting tests? Do we offer more education and information on our website, right? There's nothing really on our website that talks about where are we at as a community and what's the information, mitigation and that kind of, even pointing to the county site, right? Do we need to get better on the half that isn't enforcement as well as talk about the enforcement side?
100%. Like my opinion, I think 100%. And I think that, one of the questions that was in the survey, and I want to address that in a second, but was, do you feel like you're getting the information that you need? Is because I think, that is an area that I think we can improve. But as far as, if you ask the people, then I agree. And I look, it's a tough thing to do. To get feedback, and someone had used the same example of the school board. I think people all voted to go back, and then they chose to stay home, right? And they took some flack with it. No, I totally get that. And this is where the courage of these are the opportunities for us to have courage. People have elected us to this position in town because they have asked us to make decisions on their behalf. I think that is, part of, although it's uncomfortable, I don't like them. I don't like to do things that are hard in general. I prefer to avoid them if I can. But we all chose to run for this position.
So then Ryan, with that comment, we were elected by the residents.
Yes, sir.
Then why are we going to turn around and ask them what we should do in a survey?
Well, certainly I think politicians at further advanced levels are polling all the time to try to get a sense of what the people are saying. Because at the end of the day, for two reasons. One, they know if they don't do what the people want, they won't get elected. That's one of the things, which is good. That's good for our system. But two, when circumstances arise that are, when I ran for office, there was no pandemic. I had no knowledge, no experience. I didn't even know what the word epidemiology meant, to be quite frank with you. But since we progressed here, I think this is a time where checking the pulse of the people would be useful. And Aaron, or Trustee Kelly, I certainly could foresee a scenario where we get a big pushback that says, stay open. And at least at that point, then we could know that we're at least doing what the people want, as opposed to, coming up with solutions on our own. And I think this is one of those, Toby, to your point, I think this is one of those rare instances where getting the voice of the people, I think, is critical.
Okay, so playing devil's advocate, you have half of the residents that say shut down, the other half that say stay open. It's a no-win situation for us.
That's,
I
yeah,
think,
you know,
I think a survey is going to open up a pandemic on its own.
I think Facebook has already done that, Toby. Facebook has already done that.
If I could jump in here, we talked about all the things that we possibly could do or might be looking into do, but I think one of the things we're not doing, and Trustee Kelly, you brought this up briefly a moment ago, is we're not educating. We are not telling people what we know, coming from the best information, coming from science, coming from the experts, coming from the epidemiologists. We're not telling people, we're not getting that message out there. Here's what you should be doing to stay safe. Here's what you can do. We're not getting that message out there. So, Trustee Kajeki, you sent me actually an article the other day about what's going on up in McHenry County, and they are too looking into what can they do, and pulling liquor license was one of them. But the thing that caught my eye in this article was that they're going to go. Woodstock and McHenry are both going to start a public service campaign with the local businesses, and that campaign is going to be no mask, no service. So they're trying to partner with the local business to get that message out there, like, hey, wear the mask, that keeps you safe. If you're not wearing it, we're not going to serve you as a business. And I know that goes against pretty much everything a business is about. Like, no business wants to turn away money when it walks in the door, but that's going to keep you safe. Now, I have been in businesses locally where I've seen employees and customers not wearing the mask. So is that a product of not being educated on what is the best practice here? Is that a product of I'm just not going to follow whatever Pritzker says or whoever says what? But we don't know because we don't have that message out there. Here's what you need to be doing. You need to be wearing that mask. You need to be social distancing. You need to be washing your hands. You know, we don't have that message out there. So I think education needs to happen first. And we have been silent on that front for this entire time. We have not put out a message saying, here's what you can do to keep safe, guys. And I know people hammer on the governor all the time, but whatever he says policy-wise, he is always out there giving those press conferences. And what is the one thing he is always saying? And the doctor is always saying, wear the mask, social distance, wash your hands. Whatever policy he's talking about, that's his policy. But he's always giving those 3 reminders. This is what you need to do to help get this under control.
Mr. Hedges?
Yes, I've been asked a couple of questions and would like to comment with your permission. I'm just going to remove my mask. I'm socially distant from everybody in this room. There's 2 comments I'd like to make. One is that there's been a lot of discussion about polling and about a survey. Let's remember that this is a representative democracy, as both Trustee Kelly and Trustee Krajewski have mentioned. It's not a referendum government. I think a referendum by a government versus by an individual or by a candidate is very different and can be dangerous. All the reasons that you all mentioned. I also think, as Trustee Robinson just pointed out, that education versus enforcement can be much more effective. We don't have a Walmart in this area. But at grocery stores, as Trustee Kelly just mentioned, grocery stores, home events are causing more of the spread than restaurants and bars. People's livelihoods are not at stake when they have a Thanksgiving dinner at home, but people's livelihoods are at stake if they own a business. So I just believe that the board should be cognizant. I have been downtown several times in the last few months, although not lately, and I won't be anytime soon. I would be much more comfortable walking into any restaurant in this village than I would in the city of Chicago. I know every individual in this room. I've been in all the establishments, and I've spoken to every one of our restaurant owners in the last few months, consistently over the last few months. I'd be more comfortable having dinner at any one of the restaurants than I would at my kids' place in Chicago, because I know how they clean. So while I'm not going to suggest policy, I am going to suggest that I believe in terms of effectiveness, that education about where the spread is and how you can protect yourself from the spread, whether you go into blocks and nobody's wearing a mask, or whether you go into the cave and people are wearing a mask and where it's clean. Those are the distinctions, I believe. And I think those are the things that I would encourage you all to consider.
I think too, to Ryan's point, while I don't agree with the comparison of this to going off to war in World War II. However, I do think that I've noticed a difference in our community's response to coming together and supporting each other for COVID now than at the beginning. And what I mean by that is at the beginning, everybody, like Ryan or Trustee Krajewski said, the businesses were shut down. They couldn't do things, but they did to-go orders, and we changed some liquor licenses to allow to-go containers. The state did as well. And we really had this initiative of support your local business, order dinner out tonight, really driving some of that awareness. And that seemed to tail off the past couple of months, maybe as things opened. And now that we're getting back to where the state is starting to lock things down a little bit more, and who knows what enforcement the state will pass in weeks if these numbers don't change. I think part of that education also needs to be a campaign around supporting local businesses, getting those takeouts. Like, what are the healthy and safe ways in general that we as a community can support our businesses so they do not just survive, but they thrive. And we continue to do that. And so I'd love to see either the BDC or us come together and say, look, we're getting to a point again where not only do we need an education campaign for our residents and partner with businesses to do that, we need to consider what type of enforcements we need to potentially do, but also how do we do a campaign that really supports our businesses and calls for people to still, order that dinner out, go to Mama Tombs or go to the Copper Barrel and pick up your dinner for tonight, or to the Rose Garden for breakfast to go, right? How do we still do some of that that I thought was amazing back in April and May, and it just seems to have fallen off?
I also think that education needs to include the local business. Like, you're in the kitchen cooking, you need to have the mask on. You need to be as socially distant as you can from the guy 6 feet away from you also cooking.
Yeah, no, I would agree, Trustee Kelly, as usual. I think you do an excellent job of describing things, and I think that was more of what I wanted us to do, is to shift away from this. It's Pritzker's yelling at us, and it's his fault, it's our fault, whatever. Is let's focus on the things that we can do, and let's get behind this effort, and recognize that what we're dealing with is extreme. We'll disagree on whether the World War II thing is a good example or not. That's fair. However, I would like to see us take up our responsibility, and I still do believe getting a voice from the people would be valuable. I'm a big believer in representative government, and I think ultimately the people are in charge. That was the great experiment of America, was that we could govern ourselves. But I think these kind of things, active education behind what the governor is trying to do, at least in trying to control, and it's not the governor, it's every human who cares about people, wants this virus under control, and us sort of evaluating everything that's on the table for us to do that. And certainly it has to be undergirded at every point with supporting anybody who is in it, inordinately more affected than anybody else, and that would be our restaurants. And so in the Business Development Commission, I think as this board as a whole, I think we should sort of brainstorm all available things that we can do to drive local residents. I think the idea that Jeannie came up with, the chamber director, is with Jay with the gift certificates, is a great idea. I thought the contributing to the 50% up to $3,000 for the drive-through window for restaurants that are interested in that, to help in this cause. But I do want us to be on the side of, hey, this is a problem. We need to figure out what we can do to help. And that's really what all my point was this evening to do. And I think that we need to go forward. This needs to be our number one priority of the next couple of meetings, in my opinion.
So I'd like to see it be an and statement. What I mean by that is I still would like us to have a response to those with the bully pulpit saying that we aren't doing anything, right? I will admit Jay will be a lot better at editing and crafting and softening the letter I wrote, but I will be true and tell everybody that was my third version, because the first had curse words, the second was appropriate, and the third one I thought I did pretty good, but Jay pointed out that I didn't do as good as I could have done. So I appreciate that. But I think it's an and statement, Trustee Krajewski. I think we need to respond with we aren't sitting back. Here are the things that we are doing, we can do, and that we want to do. And we want to hear your voice I would maybe tweak the survey a little bit to make it shorter, but we want to hear your voice in general, and add some things about, would you support businesses and the restaurants, and would you be willing to do some of those things, right? So that's what I was going to say, is I think it should be an and. I don't think we should sit back and just let somebody use the microphone because they can have press conferences and then blame us for not doing anything and say the spread is because of local governments. I think we do have a responsibility to say, here is what we're doing and here's what we can do to support businesses and community health.
And I agree, and not to keep dominating the microphone, but I agree. I just would, and this was the conversation I had with Jay, is what I'd like to, if we can do that and avoid what I don't want to do is create an enemy. I mean, people, not that we can control people's opinions on these things. I mean, everyone has a TV, everyone has cable, right? For the most, not everyone, but a large part of people have access to the internet cable. They already have their opinions. But what I just don't want to do is appear to be at odds with the leadership. Because I think in a situation like this, being at odds or opposed, specifically diametrically opposed to the leadership that's coming out of Springfield, I think is dangerous. Because I don't want to send a message to the people of our town, specifically that we think that, that's all. As long as we can include that, I'm fine with it. I just, like I said, I just don't want to set us up diametrically opposed to the governor, because I think at this point, much like in a war, and I think this is a war, we need to stay in line. Because you're trying to survive, we really are. And the economics that are going to come if this thing keeps going is going to be, it could be horrible. I mean, at a scale that, that could be just devastating. I talked to a customer today who was in the, they make laundry equipment machines. They sell it to hotels. They sell it to cruise ships. They sell it to hospitals. And they just had a visit from one of their salespeople today that said their sales are cratering. So it's anecdotal. I understand that's not something, but we just need to be aware of the larger economic issues that are at risk here. And we play a very small role, but the way that societies work is when everybody takes their small role seriously and does what they can. That's how I think we come together and get through this. So as long as we, I think we should stand up for ourselves, but I just don't want to set us up as enemies to the governor.
I think taking the education versus enforcement route does that perfectly.
Trustee Klein, you've enjoyed the show. Do you have anything to add? No?
So what, we're gonna do
So we have a PR meeting on Monday. So what we can discuss on Monday at 5 o'clock after we do our A5 is our next steps as far as an education program. And then we can start to align with this based on this conversation. Does that sound fair? I mean, so we could dive into the woods a little bit about what we want to enforce. Eric, you're pretty vocal about it. If you'd like to join us on Monday after 5, you don't have to be there right at 5 because we have a presentation with A5 anyway.
Sure.
So you're more than welcome to join us.
I'll do my best.
You can do it right from the comfort of your own home.
Oh, I was gonna anyway. But if I can add into that education, I think the old keep it simple, keep it simple. I think the simpler the message, the better. The less you can say, the more you'll get.
So we should be able to develop some kind of concept and then develop a plan and start putting it in place next week, don't you? What don't you think, Toby, or Trustee Coth and Trustee Kelly?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that I just ask that when we meet on Monday, that we keep in mind what everybody's talked about and all points of view, even, when we talk about the various things we can address.
I just have a question for Jay or for Schuster or the board. Because of this pandemic and the things that are constantly coming out of Springfield daily, is there things that we can do to get messages out around our meetings? Can we do phone polls, get board approval? If we need to send something out, if something changes at state level, do we have to wait every 2 weeks for our meeting to pass something concerning the pandemic?
Are you talking about just communication out to the residents, Toby?
Yes.
I think that falls under the purview of the PR committee, so as long as it's good between the three of us, we should be able to put it out if the board's okay with it. You know, I mean,
Well, that's my question. That's my question.
We're gonna have to wait every 2 weeks for board approval for you to put
No,
on.
no, what I'm saying is that it's within our purview to, we manage social media on a regular basis anyway. We put posts out all the time. We never get board approval. But we brought this to the board this time because it was something that we all wanted to talk about as a group. Now we know how the board feels, right? We have a direction that we're gonna go. So it's to my understanding, unless somebody objects, that the PR committee has the latitude to just put this stuff out if we need to. Am I incorrect?
Is the rest of the board okay with that? Because some of this stuff is changing daily, and we don't have the luxury of time on our side to wait for a board meeting. Or we could do a phone poll, or at least call the rest of the board and let them know what's going on. Jay, your opinion?
Yeah, so trustee Coth, we have been able to solicit input from the village board without violating the Meetings Act until now. I think it's worked rather effectively. So if the PR committee would like to share their, in this particular case, share their message with me, I'll be happy to solicit input from the rest of the board as we did last week. And we can continue to do that on other matters that come up in between board meetings, I believe.
Okay, thank you.
I don't think we can actually do an actual tally or vote of any kind, but we can certainly understand what people's opinions are, one at a time.
Right. If I could just emphasize, that's the key. The trustees should not share emails directly with each other, but if you communicate to the village manager, that's what I believe he just suggested.
Yeah, I'm not,
Do not reply all.
and I think the flavor of the board is go ahead and post on after.
Right,
That's the thing.
but now, are we gonna talk about the survey on Monday, or does the board want to put the survey out, or do we want to incorporate something like that into our education plan?
Seen the survey? You've not seen the survey question?
I have not seen the survey questions.
Not either.
And my apologies. I thought that I had shared that over the weekend. I thought that was going to be included in the packet, and I didn't have a chance to look at the packet until today. So I apologize for not getting that in everybody's hands. I assumed that it was going to get in there. So
I'd like to see it before it goes out.
sure, absolutely.
That's my opinion.
We can change it too. I mean, it was just, it was one of those things where,
Right.
we just I wanted to get it, get some stuff down. Let's take a look at it. You guys modify and change it. And I'm perfectly comfortable letting the PR committee sort of deal with that on Monday. Personally, and I guess that's Trustee Klein as well as who else is not in that committee? Trustee Robinson. So if get their opinion and stuff like that too. So absolutely. I also think that we should consider this is potentially of a no mask, no service type thing. Now, whether it's sometimes I think policy is not so much about, enforcement as it is about sending messages, right? I mean, a lot of policies that could, are, we call voluntary compliance, but at least it then sends the message as to where we stand on it and what we think that people ought to be doing. So I think that is, one of the tools. I don't know if we deal with that this evening, but one of the tools that I think that we should consider doing locally if we're able to do that.
Yeah, Trustee Krajewski or to the board, I would ask that we also communicate with the businesses, and I apologize if Michelle and the business and the business owners are still there.
Yeah.
Perfect. As we work to educate people, I think it also helps us stay together and unified to support the businesses and do the right thing, and we'll talk to how can we make sure that you're able to thrive in the same respect that we probably shouldn't be and not that it's anybody in the room, but we probably shouldn't be advertising drink specials to have people come in direct violation of state things, right? It's like, how do we work together on all sides where we can promote a business, but we also don't feel like businesses are fighting against where they put us into a bad spot. So just something to be cognizant of. I know it wasn't potentially anybody in the room, but because I can't see who's in the room. But that'd be my ask, is that when we do work together, that we work together on all aspects. I think we promote things and we have specials and we do stuff, but I think that that recent post about the Monday night special got people pretty hot in the community on both sides.
I agree with that. Would it be that hard, Jay, to tell the businesses they need to put a sign up, no mask, no service?
I think we could probably get cooperation. I'm getting a lot of nods in the room here. I think 4 out of 4 in the room. So I think most of them already have it, but we can certainly, if you want us to print them ourselves, we can do that, or we can just work with them to.
Well, I would like to hope that the restaurants can see that we're trying to work with them. They need to also work with us. They need to help us help them.
That was my hope in all of this, is that we could partner together with the restaurant so they can like not look at it as a policy from us, but like get on board with it and kind of do their part to help with this.
So the answer is yes. Trustee Cook, I'll work with all of them, including the 4 that are sitting here, and we'll see that happens. And I think your advice, Trustee Kelly, about specials and advertising is also a good idea. So, and Trustee Krajewski, I believe the survey has not changed since last weekend. Is that correct? Okay, so I'll get some input. I'll share that survey with those members of the board who've not seen it and make sure that they've given me some feedback by Monday before the PR.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
And once it's all ironed out, we can just go ahead and post it. We don't have to wait till the 2nd, 3rd.
No, we're not gonna wait.
The flavor of the board is to go ahead with it.
Yeah.
So what about a posting of a letter, either something that Mr. Trustee Kelly crafted, or we post the IML, just so the residents have an understanding of where we're at with what we can do currently without enacting our own legislation, which will take time. I mean, do we want to post a letter or just want to leave that aside?
You know, why don't we craft put a page on the website for coronavirus or COVID-19 links and information, and then we can incorporate the letter and some kind of like wording about some of the stuff. Like Mr. Head just sends an email out to the staff or to the trustees about some of the stuff that he's doing, and we can include that as a resource. And then when we post on the web, like on Facebook or something, we've just launched this webpage. There's resources, all kinds of information, and then it's there. And then you're not drawing a spotlight to it, but it's on our website so that the information is there. So when people complain that we're not doing anything or what are we doing or that kind of thing, we can refer them to the web page for the.
I can't believe I'm going to say this. I agree with Trustee Grajecki that maybe mine was more of an us versus them. And I think we can recraft that letter to be more of a, here's what we're doing to help with your safety, and here's what we're allowed to do and what we can do. Village President Magnuson, I think also including on that reference page, the letter from the IML could be very powerful to say, here's what our representatives to Springfield are requesting and asking for from the governor. Because it shows that we're not an island, that we're trying to work together with other municipalities. It hurt me to say that. I just want to put that out there.
Felt good though. Felt good for me.
Mr. Robinson, Mr. Coth, you okay with that?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Can I just ask, so are we good to be open still?
Gina, I think that's a question you really don't want to answer.
You don't want to say, you don't.
Okay, all right.
Anything further on public relations?
I had stuff, but I don't want to talk about it anymore, so. It's already on time.
I second that. I second that.
I'll third it.
All right. Planning and zoning, Rob.
Unfortunately, yeah, I do have stuff for you. Sorry. Mr. Schuster sent me an email today saying that Crown has postponed its plan to proceed with public hearings in December before the Plan Commission and the ZBA. The purpose was that they were just going to focus on that northern segment, the part with the school, but now they want to include the entire development into that public hearing. So Mr. Schuster informed me that Crown is planning to proceed in January of 2021 with those public hearings.
Does that impact the school district's timeline? Because wasn't that part of the deal that we had to get it all done by the end of the year?
That I can't answer.
We don't have an answer. I can speak to that. We don't have an answer to that, but I can tell you that there is a conference call scheduled for tomorrow morning between Crown and school district to review that situation and make sure that everything stays on the right path.
I can also add that the school district has submitted their preliminary engineering plans, which are under review by EEI, so that I don't believe it will delay their process.
That's all that I have.
Thank you, sir. Any new business or other announcements before we adjourn?
It's Toby's birthday next week, isn't it?
Toby's birthday.
Happy birthday, Joe.
Happy birthday, Toby.
Fantastic. I want to commend everybody on the Chamber of Commerce's Santa Comes to Hampshire, whatever they call that now. I think the village's Santa stand turned out very nicely. Santa did a fantastic job for, I don't know how many hours he was out there, but he did a great job. And I think 100% of the people that came through the building and sat on Santa's laps had masks on, the adults, the kids, almost 100%. So kudos to everybody that was there, the vendors, everybody did a great job. Hopefully everybody had a great time. I know Santa did, I know the clerk did, she had a good time. They have their mobile units far away from us next year, but that's fine.
I know that the clerk isn't allowed to go to there.
We're going to chain her to the fence over there. Yeah, everybody had a good time, and Toby, you did a great job, really.
Yeah, I hope we have more of those kind of events downtown. And once this streetscape is done, it's just exciting to think what type of things can happen down there. Because it was so great to see during this tough time, people with smiles and walking with families and just enjoying a day. That was, I think, the community needs it.
Kudos to my afternoon elf. She really picked the pace up.
Was that you?
I think it was Linda Mojito.
Sangria Mojito.
Oh, yeah.
That was Dave's mimosa.
All right. Well, everybody have a good Thanksgiving. Be safe. Make sure it's just you and your wife at home or your kids and other family members. We have been dictated by certain folks, but everybody should stay safe and have a great Thanksgiving. Enjoy your family, your friends. When I come over, I'll have extra turkey because I have a few cancellations already, but.
We're not in your immediate family. We can't.
Yeah,
I mean, you just went against your own statement.
I will. I'll deliver it.
Drinks are on me next week at the Copper Barrel.
Your turkey for regular turkey.
There you go. Yeah, all right. Anything further?
Drinks are on me next week at the Copper Barrel.
Hey, who's kept you hydrated, Santa?
All right, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
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 Third.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Kelly.
I don't know.
Ms. Klein. Aye. Mr. Coe.
Yes.
Mr. Gajeki.
Aye.
Mr. Weed.
Aye.
Mr. Robinson.
Aye.
Motion passed 6-0.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.